There are two things that Wesley Donehue knows all about: food and politics. I sit down one-on-one with the owner of Push Digital and the co-owner of Frothy Beard and Zombies Bob Pizza for a special edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And be sure to download the free Quintin's Close-Ups app in your Apple or Google Play stores. And listen to this interview later on iHeartRadio. Wesley Donehue, it's so good to meet you, man.
Yeah, man. Finally good to meet you.
Likewise, you're like a legend around here.
Is that good, bad? I don't know, man. That might be scary, brother. I don't
know. Obviously, you are the owner of Push Digital, co-owner of Frothy Beard, co-owner of Zombie Bob's Pizza, a wannabe triathlete.
Trying.
Tell me, what else are you trying your hands at these days?
I spend a lot of time being a dad and a husband. I mean, I got a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old. My wife was due for our third boy 2 days ago, so I could get a call literally in the middle of this interview saying it's time to go. But between work, training for different endurance events, and just being a husband and a dad, man, that's all I got time for, brother. I mean, there's only so many hours in the day. Occasionally get to watch an episode of Star Trek or something like that, but I don't get to do much else.
But I know that you are very active in politics.
I am, yeah, very active.
How did you get there?
It's kind of a long story, but when I was growing up in Goose Creek, I went to Westview Middle School, and I was supposed to go to Stratford High, and they redistricted our school lines about a month before I was supposed to go to high school. So I left the 8th grade thinking I was going to Stratford. Hey, guys, see y'all at Stratford. And then in the middle of the summer, they redistricted. I went up in front of the school board, raised a lot of hell, and then through that, I met a guy named Senator Bill Mesher, who had since passed away. It's Paul Campbell's seat now. But I went and worked on his campaign, and then when I got to college, he asked me if I wanted to come be a Senate page for him when I was up at the University of South Carolina. I didn't even know what a Senate page was. I didn't know anything about politics.
Hey.
But I went up to school as an engineering major, fell in love with politics, changed my major to political science, went to grad school, worked on every single campaign I could, and kind of the rest is history. Now I own one of the Southeast's largest political consulting firms, just around 40 people here in Charleston.
And I know it's a shareable political content.
Yeah.
What are you sharing these days when it comes to politics in South Carolina?
Well, honestly, I mean, we do a lot of South Carolina politics, but the firm is mostly a national agency. I mean, we're doing races across the country, a lot of governors, U.S. senators, congressmen. But then here in South Carolina, we're doing a lot. So I run the campaign side for the South Carolina Senate Republican Caucus. But, the company is a political campaign shop, an issue advocacy shop, and a corporate brand reputation shop. So we do a lot of issues. So I'm working on beer laws, cannabis laws, but then we also do a lot of corporations over the last few years, too.
You talk about cannabis. Let me take you to something that you just posted recently on your Twitter page. You said this: big announcement in medical cannabis debate, announcing the official South Carolina pot party.
Yeah. And
obviously that comes off the controversy over this flyer about pot in South Carolina that involved Senator Tom Davis from down in Beaufort.
Yep.
And he basically says, hey, quote, we're embracing the silliness to show you the serious nature of this debate.
Yeah.
Where should this debate about medical cannabis go next?
It needs to be on the people that are suffering, honestly, man. So the reason I got into this debate is very personal for me. My mom died of an opioid overdose, and she was treating her illnesses with a lot of back pain, fibromyalgia. She was treating that with marijuana. Doctors told her that was very irresponsible, and they put her on opioids. She got addicted, and then one day my little sister found her dead in bed. So this is a very personal debate for me, but, these people, we don't know who it is yet. We're sending out these mailers of Tom Davis surrounded by girls in bikinis and saying he wants to turn this into California and just wants to have a giant pot party and everybody gets stoned. That's just not the case. This is about, little kids having seizures, people laying in bed dying of cancer, people in pain like my mom. So the concentration really honestly needs to go on South Carolinians who are suffering and treating those people with an organic, safe substance instead of these pills that doctors are loading people up with, creating this epidemic and quite frankly, murdering people.
What else are you looking at when it comes to cannabis?
What do you mean?
When you think about that debate, what else are you looking at besides the bigger picture, the obvious that we see here now? What else are you looking at?
I mean, for me, that's it. I mean, SLED makes the argument that this is a slippery slope to full legalization. I'm not looking towards that. I don't know of a lot of people in this debate that are looking towards that. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that smoke weed and enjoy weed that want full legalization. But right now, I'm not looking beyond the basic of helping people. That's why this bill is called the Compassionate Care Act. Right. I mean, it is truly about helping people. We have a subcommittee meeting in 24 minutes. Right. So by the time this airs, there would have already been another subcommittee meeting, so we should know a little bit more about the progress, at least through the state Senate.
I know you talked about your story about your mom. If you were to go and testify in front of that subcommittee, what would you tell them now?
I mean, I know most of those guys very personally, so I've worked in the state Senate, like I told you with Senator Bill Mescher. I started working there when I was 18 years old, and I've worked in the state Senate in some capacity ever since. So I know all these state senators at a very personal level. A lot of them I run their campaigns for, and even a lot of the Democrats, are beer drinking buddies. I would go and tell them my story, which is, look, this isn't a theoretical thing about people suffering. Senator, you know me. Now let me tell you about who my mother was and the pain that she was in, and how, my little sister found her laying in bed, and that's something that my sister still has to deal with. And I'll never forget the call from my sister. It was the most shocking call of my life. It was actually happened in 2004, and just receiving that call that your mom's dead, and something that you would never expect. I mean, she was a very young lady. I mean, she was only, I think, 51 years old, and it's just something that's very shocking. Is truly impacted me in every way possible. And I would just tell these senators, my story and my mom's story and my sister's story.
You talk about the Democrats. Let me take you to last week. Brady Quirk-Garvin.
Yeah,
obviously he's good
dude.
Oh yeah, he really is. And I know that he stepped down as the chairman of Charleston County Democratic Party,
which I'm happy about.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you said this, quote, "Good news here, Republicans. He helped get local Democrats more organized than ever seen."
That's right.
How can the Charleston County Republican Party get more organized these days?
When you win a bunch, you start getting lazy. And you start expecting things to come to you easily. And Republicans have been on a winning streak here in South Carolina for quite some time, even here at the local level. But what they don't understand is that the demographics of especially coastal South Carolina are changing rapidly. And Brady was able to take advantage of that. He worked his tail off. He got the Democrats more organized than they've ever been. Whenever he announced, I jokingly said, this is a really good thing for Republicans. I'm very happy, because whenever you got a workhorse on the other side, that person steps down, that's good for your side. Republicans got to understand that things aren't just going to come easy for us. I mean, this is Trump country in every single poll I've seen, but you've got these coastal counties that aren't Trump counties, and they will go the other way in a presidential year if we don't get organized on the ground like the Democrats were organized on the ground. Joe Cunningham kicked our teeth in when it comes to ground organization, and a large part of that is because of Brady and his hard work.
You talk about Joe Cunningham. Obviously, he defeated Katie Arrington last November.
Yep.
What did she do right, and what did she do wrong in your mind?
A lot of people want to talk about the issue of offshore drilling. And look, Joe and Tyler, his campaign consultant, did a great job really concentrating on that issue. But I don't think this was an issue-based race. I think this was a personality-based race. Before you can even get to an issue, you have to talk about, or you have to make yourself likable. If they don't like you, they're not even going to listen to you on the issues. First comes likability, then comes issue, and when it comes to communication tiers, okay? Joe Franklin, this is what reporters aren't talking about, was just a more likable person. Katie came across as very rough. She did not come across as a very likable person in her messaging. I know Katie personally. She lives half a mile down the street from me. She's a very good friend. I don't think the person that Katie was portrayed to be in her own media, in her own paid messaging, is who Katie Arrington is. Katie is a very loving, caring soul, and she came across as a very negative, cold-hearted individual, where Joe came across as a very likable guy that you just want to go drink a beer with. I like Joe. And even when I saw the messaging, I wanted to vote for Joe, even though I know Katie personally and I like Katie so much. And I agree with Katie on the issue. But she was very, very self-defeating in the way that campaign was run. It was the most beautifully run primary campaign I've seen in a while. It was one of the worst general election campaigns I've seen in quite some time.
What was the disconnect between the primary and the general election for her?
She was able to come across as that real tough female up against a weak Mark Sanford, but that tough female attitude didn't come across very well with Joe, who was very likable. She came across as this very unlikable. Where Joe came across as the guy you want to go have a beer with, Katie came across as a person that you don't even want to talk to in the conversation. And that was her own fault. That's not who Katie is at all. I know her very well, but that's how her commercials came across. You saw Katie and you were very turned off by her, personally. Not even from an issue standpoint. Personally, you just didn't like her. Her unfavorables were skyrocketing with her own ads. It was sad because that's not who she is.
And she's a great lady. I know her personally as well. But obviously her name, along with Mark Sanford and I believe Tom Davis and a couple other people's names are listed for 2020 for the 1st Congressional District once again.
I don't think any of those three are going to run.
Who in your mind?
I think you're going to see Nancy Mace is 100% in. I think Elliott Summey, Charleston County chairman, is in. I think you're going to see a few more elected officials jump in. I know I don't think Larry Grooms is in. I don't think Davis is in. I don't think Sanford's going to run. I'm pretty sure Katie's out. So I think the main two at the moment are going to be Nancy Mace and Elliott Summey. I'm also hearing Teddy Turner might jump in. He ran before. Right. So it could be a very crowded field.
When you look at the presidential candidates right now from a Democratic side, what do you see as a Republican?
I don't see a lot of substance at the moment. I think everybody's just going to, it's going to be a very anti-Trump campaign. We're not talking about their own ideas or what, any kind of hope or change that Barack Obama had. I think it's all going to be just slamming Donald Trump at every opportunity. I think right now everybody's just going to remain very friendly, and then they're just going to start cutting each other's asses as quick as they can. And I just don't see any energy right now. It's just a bunch of fluff, honestly. So maybe that'll change over time. Maybe they're just all kind of getting, warmed up at the moment. But I see a lot more concentration on like AOC than I am on the presidential candidates right now. No, there's just no energy or focus on any individual or any group of individuals right now. There's just no excitement out there around anybody.
And she's not running, but she's certainly in Congress.
Oh, yeah.
And I know if you were to sit down and have a beer with someone and you're trying to convince them about who Donald Trump is, what would you say?
Well, this gets me in a little bit of trouble because you can go on my Twitter account and on my Facebook account. You can see that I'm all over the place on Donald Trump. My feelings about Donald Trump change daily. I am not a hardcore Donald Trump supporter. I am not a never Trumper also. There are a lot of things that Donald Trump does that I agree with. I do think he's moving the country from a prosperity standpoint in the right direction. I think he's moving the country from a tone or a division aspect in the wrong side. I think from a policy standpoint, I agree with about 85-90% of President Trump's ideas. From a what's the best way to say this? I do not like at all some of the things he says and the things he tweets and the way it's created a lot of division in this country. I think he is his own worst enemy in a whole lot of ways. So I go back and forth, honestly. Some days I wake up and I'm totally frustrated by the president. Some days I wake up and I think this is awesome. He's heading us in the right direction. So I am somewhere in the middle. I like to judge I am not a diehard going to support a political candidate or official 100% of the time in any circumstances.
You talk about direction. Let me take you here to the city of Charleston.
Okay.
Obviously, there's a mayoral election going on, campaign going on right now.
Yeah.
Harry Griffin's in. Gary White's in tomorrow.
Yep.
Seekins is in April.
Yep.
You may have Maurice Washington in the mix.
Yep.
Who will take the Charleston into the right direction for the future in your mind?
I don't know, but I hope it's a conservative because here's the deal, man. As someone who has opened up multiple businesses in this city, am I allowed to curse on this show? It is a giant pain in the ass, man. I mean, like, it is almost like the city of Charleston does not want you to open up a business here. If I could do it over again, I would have opened up Frothy Beard, Zombie Bob's, and I just went through a $250,000 expansion on Push, also next door to Frothy.
Hey.
If I could do it all over again, I would do that over in North Charleston because Mayor Summey, does everything he can to help businesses open. Well, here here it is a massive, massive, massive pain in the ass. I wouldn't recommend any business try to move into Charleston at the moment because they do everything they can to stop you from opening. I mean, it is way too many regulations. And if you're going to have so many regulations for a city, which I understand from a safety standpoint, then you got to have the manpower to push those things through. For example, dealing with the fire marshals is insane. Now, I understand why, because we had a lot of firefighters die.
Right.
Okay, and when a crisis happens, government tends to overregulate. Well, if we're going to have those regulations that have the manpower in the fire marshal's office to be able to push things through in a timely manner for businesses, I'm not saying we don't need the regulations, although I typically am a less regulation type person. But if you're going to have those regulations, at least be able to enforce them and at least be able to push things through the city in a timely manner instead of waiting 3 months for inspections and permits for companies to open. Last night, and I don't know exactly what they're going through, but my wife and I were going to go through the new Holy City Evo location, Baker and Brewer.
Right.
So I thought they were open because Yelp said they were open. I pulled up. There were some cars in the parking lot. The door was locked. Guy came out and said, we can't open. The fire marshal found something. He's not going to let us open for about another month. Now, I don't know what's going on there, but I will tell you that's the same exact kind of experience I had when opening up Frothy.
Right.
I didn't think I was ever going to get the damn place open. So whoever this mayor is, I hope that they are a business-friendly, conservative mayor. Tecklenburg, we wanted to move to West Ashley because he put a big emphasis on West Ashley. He did make some calls to help us get some of the permitting pushed through. So I do give him some credit on that front, but it still took way, way, way longer than it ever should. And it honestly cost us about, $150,000 to $200,000 extra dollars that it should have never cost us.
How much manpower does the city have now?
Not enough. I mean, I don't know because I'm not. Look, man, I'm traveling all over the country trying to run campaigns, and I'm always in Columbia with state government, so I don't have my fingers in it like I wish I did. I'll just tell you from going through the permitting process, whatever they got, they need about double of it because they do not have enough people to help with the growth here in Charleston. They just don't. So either cut the regulations or increase the budget to increase manpower. You got to do one of them. But you can't have so many regulations and not have that manpower to be able to help out pushing that permitting through for businesses. Just doesn't work that way.
You talk about the budget. I got to take you back to Columbia. It's budget week.
Yeah, it is. Thank God I'm not up there. I had friends who were tweeting at like 1:30 in the morning last night. I do not miss those days.
What is the typical week there in your mind? You've been there. What is it like for an average person like me sitting here watching this?
Every week varies depending upon if it's budget week is obviously a crazier week, a very exhausting week, or if there's something really, really controversial going through. Most weeks they're only in session for a couple hours and then they go to committees and they do most of the work. So a lot of, these outside groups will go and bash these politicians and, well, you're only in session for 5 hours this week. What they were also in committees for 20 hours, 25 hours. I do feel bad for state legislators. It is a part-time job. They don't get paid enough, and the problem with the way government is set up is it's only set up for people who are, very rich or they're retired or trial lawyers, because trial lawyers can typically have a flexible schedule with judges. Normal people that, like a small business person like me, could never go up and serve. I just couldn't. They're only paid $20-something thousand a year. Right. But it's actually much more of a full-time job. I mean, they're in session 3 days a week. Sometimes they're in session 5 days a week. They say it's only 5 months out of the year, but they got to do constituent stuff all year long. So really, unless you are wealthy, a retiree, or a trial lawyer, you can't serve up there, which is why, the system's so damn broken. They need more normal people like me, or like us, I should say, or your viewers. I mean, there are very few of those kind of people that, even if they got elected, has the time and the money to actually just go up there and serve.
What can we expect next from Columbia?
Chaos? It's always just chaos, brother. I mean, it's a little better than Washington, but not much. I mean, there is a lot of divisiveness. The problem that we have in government is just people don't want to talk to each other anymore. And social media, I own a social media firm, is only throwing gasoline on the fire, man, because now everything is transparent. We used to say that, sunlight is, or what's the saying, that sunlight is the best disinfectant, meaning we need more transparency in government. But what I found is the more transparency we have, the more politicians want to showboat for the camera, and the more divisiveness we actually have. Where government works the best is where these politicians are actually working in the proverbial smoke-filled room in the back, cutting deals and trying to get things done. Whenever all cameras are always in their face, what happens is, and there was a lawsuit last week, I don't know if you saw this, where the media, the South Carolina Press Association, was suing the South Carolina House Caucus because the House Republican Caucus has their meetings in private. Well, let me tell you what happens when cameras and reporters move in. All those politicians start showboating for the camera, and not a damn thing gets done. So I'm not saying transparency is bad, but I will say that the level of transparency we do have now has created more divisiveness and has made government more stagnant. The country wasn't created by our founding fathers with this level of transparency. And I don't think that if we were setting up, America's government or South Carolina's government all over again today, that it would be set up the way it is right now because of that level of transparency. It's set up to be able to work together, to talk in a private room like this and to compromise. And when you bring cameras in here like we got in front of us right now, people play up to the camera.
Now, what kind of
human nature?
Human nature. What kind of deals or compromises will they make this week at Budget Week in Columbia?
Man, I don't know. I mean, there's just so much money going on right, in the coffers right now that they're just wheeling and dealing, man. Everybody's just trying to bring home something for their constituents. These guys are elected to be the voice for their specific district, but they also have to look out for the entire state. So what happens is they try to fund big state programs like education, but they're also trying to bring home the bacon for their individual constituents too. So you see a whole lot of wheeling and dealing. So, you can get that local road fixed, or that local group can get funded, or that local bridge can get fixed. So a lot of just, a lot of deal cutting.
You talk about roads and bridges. Obviously, you own a lot of business here in Charleston.
Yep.
I got to talk to you about 526.
Oh, it's a cluster, man. I mean, so my firm was responsible for all the marketing for the $600 million tax increase that we saw. I'm very proud of that one because when we started that campaign, 13% of Republican primary voters supported that gas tax increase. When we finished it, 76% of Republican primary voters supported it. So I'm glad that South Carolinians are South Carolina Republicans are looking at it the way Ronald Reagan used to look at it and say, all right, it is okay to increase taxes occasionally when it's for something as big as infrastructure. The roads, man, I live out in Somerville.
Right.
You know how big of a pain in the ass it is to get down here or to get home at night? But yeah, I mean, to your point about 526, it's, people down here want it. They want it. I mean, there's no doubt that Charlestonians want 526. They say finished, but I'll call it expanded.
Where should it expand to in your mind?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I haven't, I'm looking at so much that I don't know. I can't just go and sit and look at maps all day. So I haven't paid as close attention to it as I could. I've been talking to Elliot Sumney about it a good bit because he's a good friend of mine, and I know he's supporting it, getting expanded. But as far as actually where it goes, I hadn't even looked at it. You know way more about that than I do. I'm never going to be one of those guys that sit up here and try to bullshit and pretend I know something I don't. I don't know. I'm for anything right now that gets me home faster so I can tuck my kids in at night and read my bedtime story, because right now it is a pain in the butt to get home that quick.
Yes, indeed. Well, Wesley Donehue, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
All right, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was awesome.
Likewise.